On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast, we dive into Prince's ultimate horny for God anthem, Lovesexy. And helping me out on this manic, kind of sort of crazy song is Erica Thompson. Welcome back to the show, Erica.
Hey there. Oh my gosh, I love the horny for God line. I think that is pretty apt.
I think so too. I just came up with it last night when I was thinking of how would I describe this song to somebody in like a sentence or less. And I'm like, Lovesexy is like Prince being horny for God. That's in my mind. And this is where, like, when we go through the lyrics, as we were talking about leading up to recording, this song might have alternate meanings to people, but for me, that's kind of always been like Prince's ultimate horny for God, because he goes there later in the song. Specifically, he gets pretty raunchy for, you know, this era at least. Explicitly raunchy on this song. This is definitely before he felt like he couldn't express sexuality or lust or desire in a more explicit way. Like, he always had that in his songs, even later on, but he's still putting stuff out there that would have fit right in on Dirty Mind or Controversy, you know. I don't know. So, overarching thoughts on the song, Erica. I know you chose the song, but at the same time, do you have any like specific feelings about this song? Is it one of your favorites? Is it not one of your favorites from Lovesexy?
Well, it's funny because it's actually not one of my favorites. Like, I will skip this song if I'm just listening for pleasure, but I do think it's important in the context of the whole spiritual concept album. And, you know, it's the title is the concept that he defines for this project, Lovesexy, the feeling you get when you fall in love, not with a girl or boy, but with the heavens above. So I think it's really important to talk about this song in that respect.
Absolutely. I mean, as you mentioned, it's the title track. So title tracks, especially with Prince albums, are intended to really kind of deliver a strong, cohesive message, kind of sum up the experience that the album is intended to provide. And, you know, it needs to have a little bit of weight to it. You know, his title songs aren't usually skip-worthy tracks. I mean, oftentimes, especially in the 80s, he would lead his albums off with the title track. I mean, almost every album in the 80s did that. Purple Rain had ended, but pretty much everything, and of course, you know, with the self-titled, there is nothing, and that's the 70s anyway, but a lot of his albums, not all of them obviously, but a lot of his albums lead with the title track. So it's kind of like, this is my mission statement. This is, you want to know what this album's about? Listen to this title track. And Lovesexy does that, but it's just not at the beginning of the album. You know, it's more like sort of in the middle-ish.
Yeah, and I would argue that I Know is actually a better introduction to this. Like, I Know has more straightforward declarations of his faith than this song. So I'm happy he chose that instead of Lovesexy. But I think I always like to remember what he told Rolling Stone about this whole album, that it's a mind trip. And I think Lovesexy, the song, is very much a mind trip too. It's not like super eloquent. I think he's really just trying to convey a feeling with both the music and both, you know, some of his lyrics, but it's not like a song you would listen to as evidence of Prince as a great lyrical songwriter. You know what I mean? There are other songs for that.
Yeah, and you know, he mentions Lovesexy previously in the album, as he talked about in I Know as the lead-off song for the album. It's right there, like in the chorus, Lovesexy is the one till my day is done. In Alphabet Street, we get a reference to Lovesexy. In Cat's Rap, Lovesexy was the glam of them all. But at this point, if this is like your first listen to the album, I don't think it's very clear yet what Lovesexy actually is. It's supposed to be something that's amazing, something that, you know, is a positive, definitely not a negative feeling. I mean, it combines two words that that Prince was very in tune with his music and his personality, love and sex. So you kind of already know that this is something that he's going to hold in high regard, but we still don't really exactly know what it is. So the line that you mentioned, Lovesexy is the feeling that you get when you love God, basically. Where was that from again?
I know he defines it in like the liner notes.
Okay.
And also, I'm going to be bringing this up throughout our discussion in the Lovesexy tour book, which I don't expect like the average listener to access that, but Prince does elaborate on that concept in the tour book, but it's definitely in the liner notes of the album.
Okay. So I was just trying to think of like if there was a more clear definition of the term Lovesexy in this album prior to, this song on the track listing. I couldn't think of it. But when he brought that, I'm like, well, I know I've heard that before, but where have I heard that? And it was failing me. So I'm sure I got it from the same places you did, from any writings that have been done on this album, or like you said, tour books or interviews or liner notes. He tries to elaborate a little bit better, and I get why he did that. I mean, the show, the Lovesexy tour, is a very theatrical tour where it provides a lot of context with the dark and light sides. Act 1, Act 2. So I could see why he would want to make sure that is clear to the concert goers through the tour book. I think this song is supposed to do that too. It's supposed to kind of give a little more explanation, I think, to what Lovesexy is and how it relates to the concepts of the album, how it relates to anybody's day-to-day life, whether you're a believer or not. And one thing I'll point out is, like, he refers to it, he calls it a lot, like, in the song It from Sign of the Times, you get the impression he's clearly talking about sex. Here, it, when he says that, you are meant to believe that he's talking about Lovesexy, I think. And so anytime you hear the word it, I think he's referring to Lovesexy, but I don't know that for a fact.
Yeah.
If you picked up on all the it references, like, as we go through the lyrics, it'll become more clear now that you're thinking about it, or if the listener's thinking about it. There's a lot of references to it here. For me personally, I love this song, and I don't know why. I cannot explain why. I think it's because it's so kind of strange and crazy and a little bit chaotic, and I like that production style in general. Like, I'm a big fan of, like, Public Enemy, for example. Public Enemy's production style with the Bomb Squad has been kind of known to be very chaotic, like samples thrown in left and right, beats switching on a dime. It's just a very chaotic production style, hip-hop production style, and I was always attracted to that. And so I find a lot of beauty in chaos in music, where some people maybe like their songs a little cleaner or a little more refined. The louder and the crazier and the more chaotic the song sounds, I can get down with that in maybe ways that other people don't. So I really, and I actually laugh. Like, the song genuinely makes me laugh.
Yeah, me too.
Especially at the end. So I can't wait to get to the end, because
I can't wait to hear you say those lyrics. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
I literally laugh out loud. Like, people say LOL and they just kind of mean chuckle. No, I laugh out loud. Like, this song makes me laugh. And I think that's good, because the song is supposed to, I think, be really kind of a joyous expression. And Prince seems very happy throughout the song. He's talking about feeling so good, and it's so great, it's amazing. It being, again, what I believe to be Lovesexy. And then towards the end of the song, it just kind of goes off the rails, but for me in a good way, where other people might get turned off by just how nuts it gets. And I love it. I just can't. It's just one of those things I can't explain, and I'm going to stop trying to. So yeah, this was recorded early 1988. I guess there was a previous version of this song that I've never heard. I don't know if you have, called Lovesexy, but it's spelled Luvsexy, two separate words. I mean, I would love to hear it someday, but I've searched high and low. I can't find anybody that has, posted it anywhere or has a copy of it anywhere. But it's just, from what I understand, it's like an even more sped up version, like an even faster version of this song. Some of the elements from the original incarnation of Lovesexy made it to the version from the final album, like the horns. Eric and Atlanta's horns are still there. I think the repeated of the poem from the beginning of I Know that Ingrid Chavez recites, that Prince then recites in this song, that was in the original Lovesexy, but the ending section with his voice going in different pitches, that was new. That was a new addition, I believe. So anyway, I just thought I'd bring that up in case anybody out there has a copy and they want to slip it my way or
Yep.
give me a nudge. I'd love to hear it, but something tells me it hasn't really been unearthed, with the exception of maybe just a handful of people, because I just can't seem to find it.
Yeah.
All right. So the song starts off with, kind of like this drum beat in a synth line. And then we get Prince saying, new power, give it to me. And then he says, oh, I need some bottom in here. Lay it on me. And he says this in his, deeper register. Nothing much, I guess, to really talk about here. This little opening intro is just kind of it is what it is. It's an introduction to the song. It doesn't really express a lot of deeper thoughts or I think anything that we need to discuss super in depth. But the reference to new power, of course, can't go ignored, because this is the album that those two words together, new power soul, new power generation, whatever it is, we get introduced to that with this record. We heard it on I Know previously on the album. Need some bottom in here. I believe that to be referring to bass, bottom from the music, but I guess there could be a double entendre there, just like anything, I guess. I don't know. Do you have any further thoughts on the intro, Erica?
Yeah, I think the most important takeaway, like you said, is the new power. And in this context, when I think about new power generation, I think about it representing a new positive era following Prince's spiritual awakening that I know you've referenced in previous Lovesexy episodes, the Blue Tuesday, the shelving of the Black Album, and all of that. So I think of that as, I know his band would later become the new power generation, but I do think of this as like a turning point.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's no accident that he's referring to new this and new that on this record. It's definitely intentional, and there's very clear meaning behind it in his mind and what it intends. Like, this is the new direction. This is my new direction. Everybody on the block say it is the best. The most vital is what they say, more or less. It put my name upon my thigh. It makes me dance. It makes me cry. And when I touch it, race cars burn rubber in my pants. Okay. All right. Well, this first verse, I counted. He uses the word it 5 times. Everybody on the block say it is the best. The most vital is what they say, more or less. It put my name upon my thigh. It makes me dance. It makes me cry. When I touch it, race cars burn rubber in my pants. So, listening to it for the first time, it's kind of hard to go back in time and think about, like, let's pretend I had never heard this song before. And this is the first time I'm really kind of comprehending the lyrics. He keeps talking about it. So, you're forced to, the listener's forced to kind of put their own thoughts on what it is. Sure, Lovesexy seems like the obvious answer because that's the name of the song, and you get the feeling that maybe he's going to finally help us define this term in his mind that he created, that he coined. But I mean, it could be a lot of different things. I mean, the other obvious thing that it could be is a reference to sex, of course. I mean, any of these words or any of these lines, it's certainly, you replace it with sex and it makes sense. And of course, that I believe that's intentional again, because Lovesexy is like this mashup of love and sex, and now we find out is also a mashup of love and sex and God. And that's really what I believe this album is intending to express, is this. It's all, it's all kind of lumped together as one entity instead of these separate things, and that's why he smushed those words together. It's all, in his mind, intertwined in a way. Before we get to that last line, I want to talk about the last line. But what else about this verse, did you want to point out, Erica?
Yeah, so bear with me. I have a lot to say about this verse, but
Perfect.
I think it'll help set us up for the rest of the song too. So, regarding it can also be a drug. Like if you think about it, everybody on the block says it is the best. It's the most vital. Like, this stuff is good. Like, this is the strong stuff. This is the stuff that you want. And when you go back to what he said about Lovesexy being a trip, it's easy to think about a drug trip. And then again, not to rehash this, but I know you've referenced this, but, he allegedly had an ecstasy trip the night before he decided to shelve the Black album. And we know that from commentary from people who were around him, including Kat Glover. She recently went on a podcast and said he did experiment that night. She didn't name the drug, but if we think about lyrical references like squirrel meat on Super Funky Califragisexy, it's like, it's probably ecstasy, right?
Right.
But I think the key here is that he's saying you can achieve that same state of ecstasy through communion with God. So it's a metaphor. It could be a metaphor for that. And we know that from his definition of Lovesexy, but also in the tour book, and the poem, which is kind of a retelling of that night, he also calls Lovesexy endorphin. And, endorphins are the peptides in the brain that resemble opiates. They reduce pain and they produce euphoria. And so when you think about it make me dance, it make me cry, it's like a drug. But I personally interpret it as a relationship with God. And in that poem in the tour book, he says, God is alive. Let him touch you and he will quench every thirst. Let him touch you and an aura of peace will adorn you. Let him touch you and heaven is yours. And so when you think about, the touching, when you touch it, race cars burn rubber in my pants. So I think that is something to keep in mind. But also to your point, it could be sex. So there is that sexual component. And when you think of the drug ecstasy and the heightened sensations, people take it before they have sex. But again, Prince is speaking about sex differently on the whole Lovesexy album than he did earlier in his career. So it's really about sex in a loving relationship and a monogamous relationship, especially when you think of songs like When Two Are in Love. And it's not consistent. There are exceptions on this album, but for the most part, he's talking about sex in a different context. And in the poem in the tour book, he talks about something called the sexuality real. And I interpret that as like a holy type of sexuality, meaning sex in the confines of a monogamous relationship, which in the Bible is morally acceptable. And, Jason, I always love to give you a Bible verse. So,
just waiting for it.
Yeah, one that is apt here is 1 Corinthians 7, verses 1-2. And that's, basically it says it's good for a man not to touch a woman. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife and let every woman have her own husband. So it's kind of like sex is a gift from God, but you have to do it in the right way. And then, of course, Prince has always talked about the act of sex as bringing one closer to God. Like I think about the song Adore when we talk about that. So I think all of those different themes are swirling in this one silly little verse. And the last thing I want to say about it is it put my name upon my thigh. I mean, that's like a silly throwaway reference to his costumes of the time, which had his name on his pant leg. But yeah, those are my thoughts.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's very, very eloquently stated. I mean, but you're right. Context is everything. In the context, and that's why I believe the same thing you believe, where even though it could be a lot of different things, on the album Lovesexy, it is going to probably have a different meaning, a different interpretation than if Lovesexy was thrown on the Black Album.
Yeah.
Or if Lovesexy was on the track listing for Dirty Mind. It's probably not going to be that. It's probably not going to be it meaning a relationship to God and how that can deliver a more natural high than, you know, a synthetic drug or something like that, where in songs like Super Funky, we kind of, it seems pretty clear that he's not talking about God there, and all of these things that are causing, you know, him to sweat and his mouth to run dry is not because he's got this illicit relationship with God, but he's experiencing side effects of, you know, a party drug. On Lovesexy, it likely has a completely different meaning, because this is what he's been trying to get at for the most of the entire album. You know, as we mentioned, there's inconsistencies, but the general theme is this album is expressing an expression of faith in how relationships with God can provide those endorphin kicks in the same way that maybe something less natural, like a drug or alcohol, would do to people who don't have that same relationship with God. And he's trying to show us in his mind, a better way. And this is why I believe that he's talking about his relationship with God and how that has made his life so much more rich and full. And he's also, you know, because he's talking about everybody on the block and being the most vital, and, you know, vital here can, you know, be used to express something like essential, but it also can be used to think of something that's full of energy and full of life. You know, vital has a couple different meanings too, and they both really work in terms of what he's expressing as his relationship with God is vital in both ways. It's full of life, and it's also essential to him. And that's why I like, you know, a couple lines here are interesting, but then it goes off the rails a little bit in my mind with the, and when I touch it, race cars burn rubber in my pants. So this is, I mean, I guess I take that just to mean get some kind of revved up, get some going, or if you want to be a little more crude, get some horny.
Yeah.
And this is
only
why
Prince would come up with a line like this. Like, I would never think about like race cars burning rubber.
No. No, it's a line that you don't expect. I didn't expect it when I'm hearing this album, even though I should have. I mean, Alphabet Street's full of car metaphors.
Yeah.
So I don't know why I wouldn't have expected it. I absolutely should have, but I just thought, oh, maybe Lovesexy, like Anesthesia, is pretty, you know, kind of PG, and it really doesn't say anything dirty or have any kind of double entendres or metaphors in there that you could interpret as being dirty. But that's more the exception on this album, I feel, than the rule. We get to the chorus then. This feeling so good in every single way. I want it morning, noon, and night of every day. And if by chance I cannot have it, I can't say. But with it, I know heaven's just a kiss away. Kiss away. All right, so the chorus is kind of interesting and fun. I like the chorus a bit, just because it seems to reiterate what he's already trying to say with this joyous feeling he's got. This feeling so good in every single way, not just like it feels good in a moment or feels good, you know, when you're in it, but like in every single way it feels good. And it's almost like and again, you can think of it again like a drug, because I think he's trying to replace illicit drugs with God. Like he's a little bit overcompensating maybe for some of the things that he might have gotten into in 1987, and he kind of feels bad about, or like that wasn't the right choice for him. I want it morning, noon, and night of every day. That almost feels like somebody's addicted to it a little bit. Mm-hmm. And if by chance I can't have it, I can't say. So if I can't have this thing, I don't even know what's going to happen. Like I can't control myself. I can't predict how this is going to, you know, where this is going to lead me, or you know, is it going to take me down a dark path again if I can't have this thing, in this song, what we believe to be Lovesexy. But with it, I know heaven's just a kiss away. So he gets, again, you feel like he's getting closer to God through it through maybe sex or maybe his relationship to God or whatever it is. At this point, we're not totally sure. I think it gets more clear as the song goes on. So with the chorus, what did I miss? What do you want to talk about?
Yeah, no, I think you hit it, right on the head there. And I do love that turn of phrase, I can't say. I think that's a really cool way to describe what you just said. Like, who knows what's going to happen. But I do want to bring up something that I always kind of keep in my pocket now. I think it's just, studying Prince's interviews, he always at some point gives you more insight to his songs. So, and I'm sure I've referenced this somewhere on this podcast before, but there's a 1996 interview that he did with the Globe and Mail, and he says, you don't think God is sexy? When you have faith, serotonin starts pumping in your brain. It's the same as when you have an orgasm. And so I always think about that explanation when listening to songs like this, because like we've been talking about, it's a metaphor. It's not sexual ecstasy, it's spiritual ecstasy, but they can be described in the same way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Like, why be horny for God? Well, because maybe God delivers the same chemical reaction in your brain that an orgasm does, and if you really enjoy that, and who doesn't, then you're going to find other ways to achieve that, and ways that maybe, hopefully, are a little less self-destructive, I guess.
Yeah. And one other thing I will mention, the kiss away, heaven's just a kiss away. Like, I think about that in two different ways. So it's kind of like the kiss can be God, back to that poem in the tour book when he's saying, let him touch you. Like, that's the touch, that could be the touch or kiss of God. But then also if you're talking about like a romantic partner, and you're thinking about how in a monogamous loving relationship, being intimate can bring you closer to God. It's like, heaven is just a kiss away when I engage with this person.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. So that's the chorus to Lovesexy. I think we're getting a little bit clearer picture now painted for us about what Lovesexy is. It's a feeling. It's something that you want, and it gets you closer to God. Heaven's just a kiss away. So we move on then to the second verse. He says, dig me now. Anyone that's ever touched it, they don't want anything else. And I got to tell the world, I just can't keep it to myself. All in life becomes easier. No question is unresolved. And I'm not afraid. Come on and touch it. I know you will love it. With it, I know that heaven's a butterfly kiss away. Kiss away. And then he jumps right into the chorus after that, but we won't jump into the chorus here. We'll just kind of stop at this point. Okay, so with the second verse, Erica, I think I'll let you go first. This one doesn't, I don't know, I mean, it kind of says a lot of the same stuff to me as what's already been said, so I like verse 1 a little bit better, but maybe verse 2 speaks to you, or maybe there's something in here you wanted to really kind of touch on or talk about.
Yeah, I think the thing in here that stands out to me is just the evangelism. So like, I got to tell the world, I can't keep it to myself. That's like, he's got to spread the good news about God. And then also when he talks about life becoming easier and no question is unresolved, again, that's his relationship is bringing that with God, is bringing that clarity and peace to him. And I think of Matthew 7:7, ask and it shall be given to you, seek and ye shall find, knock and it shall be open unto you. So God is answering all of those questions for him. So that's what stands out the most to me about this verse. Yeah, he is, he's experiencing it. He's talked about how much he loves it, how much it makes him feel good. So now he wants to share that. And that's seemingly what a lot of this verse is intending to express, is his desire to share this with the world. And one thing I did want to touch on is the word touch, and how it's used in this song. So I just find it interesting about how he keeps talking about touching it. Like, he talks about himself touching it. He wants other people to touch it. If you touch it, I'll touch it. And when I think of the touch, when in terms of God or in reference to God, you always think of it the other way around. Like, God touches you. Mm-hmm. You're touched by God.
Here, it's like he's wanting himself and others to take a more active approach. You need to touch it. When you touch it, race cars burn rubber in my pants, or touch it, he says here, anyone that's ever touched it doesn't want anything else. And come on and touch it, he says. He's like imploring people to touch it. Like, don't be afraid, touch it. I know you'll love it. I just find that interesting. I don't know if you thought about that at all yourself, Erica. But
yeah, no, I think that's a great interpretation of it. And like you said, taking the initiative, like, God is here for you, but you've got to seek him out. So I hadn't really thought about that, but I think you put that really well.
Yeah, it's just a different way of doing it. You just don't hear it that way. Usually kind of like if you look for God, he'll come find you, and you'll be touched by God and his glory and wisdom. But Prince is definitely taking the initiative here, taking the active role, and wants other people to do it as well. Of course, I can't. I simply can't ignore the potential double entendre here about, come on and touch it. I know you'll love it. With it, I know that heaven's a butterfly kiss away. Like, okay. Could he also be meaning his penis?
Yes.
Maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
So can't ignore it. I don't even want to ignore it. Let's just lay it out there. Prince loves to do this kind of stuff. He loves to play with his words. He loves to play with double entendres and alternate meanings. This is a song that is pretty much all about that. Like, we haven't gotten to it yet, and I keep talking about the ending of the song. That is just double entendre filled, like to the brim, like it's overflowing.
No, I can imagine some people listening to this and rolling their eyes at us, like, guys, he's talking about his penis. Yeah, but no, also though, like, he's talking about his penis. He's talking about sex. Like, stop all this spirituality talk. Like,
the other way, yeah.
Yeah, no, seriously. And I can't fault those people, because if you're just casually listening to this, it just sounds like the Prince from back in the day, from the early 80s. It's just like filthy. So, yeah, I do keep that in mind.
But again, this is where, like, context again is everything. Like, yes, this song on the Black Album or on Dirty Mind or even on like 1999, yeah, it is probably his dick. But this is on Lovesexy, so we kind of have to look at it a different way, at a different angle. I'm assuming he wants us to look at it from more than one angle, because this is not the album where he's only talking about sex and that's his main focus or his main lyrical focus.
Yeah,
he told us, and I know.
And not to go on a tangent, but I think it's important. It's like Prince is kind of always telling us to look deeper, like even with the cover, which again, I know you've covered, but it's like people look at that and they thought it was salacious, but like in interviews, Prince is like, no, that's the way you see it, but this is like pure to me. So, get your mind out of the gutter, right? It's so like, I see Prince's point, but on the other hand, I am realistic. Like, come on, Prince. Like, you knew people would think about it in the filthy way as well. So it is really interesting. But yes, Prince was always asking us to look deeper. Yeah.
This is a perfect example of that for sure. Okay, so as I mentioned, he goes straight into the chorus again, but the chorus doesn't change. This feeling's so good in every single way. I want it morning, noon, and night of every day. And if by chance I cannot have it, I can't say. But with it, I know heaven's just a kiss away. Kiss away. Lovesexy. So who's saying Lovesexy? Do you know?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
It sounds like Sheila to me, but I don't.
It could
see
be
that
Prince too. Yeah,
it could, especially knowing what he does with his vocals later in the song. But yeah, no, on Prince's fault, Sheila is not credited with any kind of vocals on this song. So it very well could just be Prince's vocals pitched up a little bit to sound more feminine. That's sexy. And this is when we get just a repeat of the poem at the very beginning that we heard previously at the very beginning of the album on I Know with Ingrid Chavez. Rain is wet, sugar is sweet. clap your hands, stomp your feet. But the big difference is how it's delivered here. So at the beginning, it's real ethereal, you know, and you've got, like, it's really kind of done quietly and slowly. This song, this is repeated, and there's like hand claps, and it's said in Prince's lower register, so it's, you know, the vocals are much lower, much more masculine. Rain is wet, sugar is sweet. Clap your hands, stomp your feet. Everybody knows. When love calls, you gotta go. And so we don't need to rehash again, like, anything about this lines. It's just an interesting, you know, kind of callback to I Know and to that opening.
Yeah.
I think,
if you don't mind, though, I would like to talk a little bit about Ingrid,
sure.
Just really quickly. So, you know, as if folks have been listening to the podcast, they know that Ingrid was Prince's spiritual muse during this time. And I just want to add a quote from her that I actually spoke to her and got this about the Black Album and Lovesexy. And she says, nice. Yeah, when I look at the Black Album and I look at Lovesexy, it's the heart and the mind is in the right place on the latter. The act is the same, but it's more meaningful. You're having a union with someone as opposed to each one just satisfying each other. And she says he wanted to connect on a spiritual level. So I think that just reiterates what we've been talking about the metaphor and what it is. I also think it's important to remember that Prince uses bits of Ingrid's song Cross the Line in the Lovesexy tour. And again, in speaking with Ingrid, she described Cross the Line as moving from darkness to light. And one lyric in that song says, heaven is yours if you want it. And of course, Prince is referencing heaven throughout this song. And then also in the album with the song, I Wish You Heaven. And, you know, Prince and Ingrid were writing their albums at the same time, and they were being influenced by each other. And also in the tour book, Prince says, heaven is yours, which again is a direct lyric in Ingrid's song. So I did think it was important to mention that, and also a couple other things, in the Graffiti Bridge, in which Ingrid is in that. And again, she's spiritual muse. She's Aura. She has the line that says, still forever searching for the spiritual substitute for sex. And again, I think that's a great way to describe what's going on here. And then finally, in this verse, he says, when love calls, you've got to go. Well, you remember he defines God as love in Anesthesia. So when I hear that line, I think when God calls, you got to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Very important thing to note, I think, because you didn't have that meaning necessarily when you first heard this poem at the beginning of I Know. Because, you know, again, the track listing, Anesthesia, comes later.
Yeah. So,
love is God, God is love. You had not heard that yet if you're listening to this album for the first time in the sequence that it was intended. Because, again, this album was just one long track. So Prince wanted you to listen to it in order. He didn't want you to play Anesthesia first or Lovesexy first. He wanted to kick it off with I Know. So that is important. We do have the decoder ring now for this line.
Yeah.
And for love. I mean, you and I, we both have been in it for a while, so we already knew this. But again, taking yourself back to 1988 or whenever it was the first time you heard Lovesexy, you know, whatever year that was, it's important to know, like, this is something that he's kind of unraveling for us. Unspooling for us as we listen to the album.
Yeah.
So that's cool. One thing I forgot to mention, and it doesn't have much to do with the lyrics, but just how the performance of this song. So in between that second chorus in this poem being recited, Prince starts screaming. Like, he's screaming, he's making noises. It's really chaotic before the bridge. And at one point, it almost sounds like he's trying to beatbox a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, if you have headphones on, you hear, like, all these weird mouth noises that he's making. Like, he's smacking. It's like, I hear, like, a boom, boom, you know, like this beatbox type of style or sound that he's making. And I'm just, again, I don't know what he's trying to do. I don't know if he's, like, speaking in tongues here or what he's doing. But it's kind of crazy. And this is when the song really starts to take a turn for The worse or better, depending on your perspective, but definitely the weirder. It takes a turn for the weird.
Yeah, it's a descent into silliness is how I describe it. Yeah.
There you go. Descent into silliness. All right, so after the bridge, then we get like the last grouping of lyrics is very long. So I will break them up because it's pretty much now just words throughout the rest of the song until the outro. So I'll just start with the first one. And keep in mind now, listening to the song, it starts off with Prince in his lower register, but then it goes higher and then it starts to, go lower again slowly. It sounds like there's multiple voices singing or reciting these lines. So it kind of throws the listener off. Like, what am I hearing? Am I hearing Prince in different registers? Am I hearing Prince's bandmates? You don't really know what you're hearing, but what he says is, tonight we make love with only words. Girls first. Girls first. Okay, so like first I would start by telling you how smart and intelligent the curve you're behind is. And then I can tell you that I can just smell you. And race cars burn rubber in my pants. But I really dig tripping on the thought of being caught by someone with your beauty, style, and grace. Baby, I don't care. I would rip out my hair for just 2 nights with your face. I don't want to make love to you. I just want to look at you. I just want to listen to you. And he says, oh, pretty little whip, you got me dripping. Dripping all over the floor. If I come back as a woman, I want a body like yours. A body like yours. Living rooms, I think you would. I think you would want to play house. Yeah, I think you'd want to play house. All right, I'm going to stop there. Okay, there's lots to unpack here. So I think, again, the decision to alter the pitch of his vocals throughout the reciting of these lines, as I mentioned, throws the listeners for a loop, like they don't know who they're listening to. I can tell you, the first time I heard this song, I did not know it was Prince singing all these. I thought he had enlisted Kat or Sheila or Bonnie or somebody in his band to help him out. Like they would go back and forth, switch back and forth. But then the more I listened to it, I'm like, yeah, but in the middle of a line, his vocals will start to change pitch. So I'm like, either that's some really slick studio manipulation, or it's all said by the same person and they're just changing the pitch as the lines go. But anyway, yeah, so it's all him, and it's like him doing Camille, but like times 100, because it's not just Camille, it's all over the place. I don't know. I mean, if I'm going to put any greater meaning behind why he did that, the only thing I can really come up with is just like any person, any gender, any pronoun can get down with the concept of lovesexy. Like he wants it to make all inclusive. Maybe I am putting a bit more meaning behind his reasoning for doing it, other than he just liked the way it sounded or thought it would be cool or whatever. But just changing his vocal pitch throughout this gives a lot of fluidity to how you're interpreting it, like whether or not you're a man listening to it, whether or not you're a woman listening to it, however you identify yourself, you can think of these lines and think of it, what he's saying from your own perspective, maybe. I don't know. I mean, without getting straight into the lyrics first, like talking about the lines and the words, I don't know if you had any further thoughts on why he did this, or just like what's your general thought of him making this choice in general.
Yeah, I mean, I think, all of those factors that you mentioned are always there because of what we know about Prince, and especially with him with the symbol and being in touch with both his masculinity and his femininity. So I think that's always there. But when I listen to this, I just think he wants to convey a conversation between a man and a woman, and especially because he's like girls first, girls first. So I just feel like it's a conversation. If he did all the vocals and everything, that he just wanted to convey that. I don't know why he chose to do that as opposed to getting Kat or someone, or again, I wasn't in the studio, so I don't know. But yeah, I just think of it as a conversation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I kind of take away with this, and I know this is going to sound crude to some people, and apologies ahead of time. It feels like he's trying to fuck God.
Oh, okay.
With words. Let me, put that little caveat in there, with words, because that's the first line. Tonight we make love with words. And so it feels like he's trying to have sex with God through words. Like, listen to all these lines. He's trying to pick somebody up. I would start by telling you how smart and intelligent the curve of your behind is. And then I can tell you I can just smell you. Race cars burn rubber in my pants. I mean, he recycles that line again. And the previous time he recycled or used that line in the first verse, you and I agreed, and hopefully other people agree too, that we think that he's talking about his relationship to God and how his relationship to God makes him feel good. It turns him on a little bit, because it gives off the same chemical reaction in his brain. Caught by someone with your beauty, style, and grace. So maybe he's talking to somebody else, another human being, but he had not really been talking about other human beings up to this point. So either he completely changes what he's intended to deliver in the song, or he's still talking about God and talking about how turned on he is by God and by this concept of lovesexy and, the feeling of the spiritual connection. Like he's just, and I know I said it that way in a way to be a little shocking. But that's how I think of it. I think of it, he's talking to God right now. For 2 nights with your face, I don't want to make love to you. I just want to listen to you. Mm. He says, I want to look at you too, but I just want to listen to you. You got me dripping all over the floor. So, of course, that's an allusion to, arousal. If I come back as a woman, I want a body like yours. I don't know. He could be talking about a woman, like an actual human woman. But to me, that doesn't fit with what he had been talking about throughout the song. So I still think he's talking to God. We're talking about God, which also explains why he wants to make love with words, because, of course, you can't actually have sex with God. So this is his way of saying, I'm freaking turned on right now by this lovesexy feeling, and I'm going to express this in a really kind of overtly sexual way and kind of crude way, to be maybe a little provocative, maybe give some people, a reason to get into this this concept of love is God, God is love, because look how amazing I'm describing it. I don't know. I'm going to let you talk now, because I probably talked myself into a box.
Well, I think
a bunch of hate mail.
No, I think box is an apt term, right? Because I think we want to fit Prince into a box sometimes, even within one song. And it makes sense. Your interpretation is valid because, like you said, we've been talking about this metaphor this whole song so far. So it makes sense that we want to extend it. But I guess, and maybe it's because of my own, desire to be comfortable and not think of it the way that you described, but I'm allowing for space for Prince to change what he's talking about in the song, right? And especially if we go back to what we said, what we were talking, what I mentioned about the sexuality real and, sanctioning sex within a monogamous or a loving relationship. So I do think about a woman, him talking about a woman here. And then in terms of making love with only words, this concept is not new in Prince's music. We think of him as a sexual person, but he wasn't always talking about the act itself, doing it right then and there. He liked to build anticipation. And so I always think about the song Satisfied from 3121 later in his career, where he says foreplay starts in the mind. And then also when you think about songs like The Continental from the Love Symbol album, where it's tell me how you want to be done, right? And then you get the girl telling him what she wants. And so this is a common theme with Prince. And again, if you think about Alphabet Street and the voyeurism he talks about in that, voyeurism is not new, in his catalog either. So sometimes it's not about getting down right then and there, but it's about building that anticipation. So that's what I think about when I hear this verse.
And, you're probably thinking about it the way most people think about it, because they may not be quite as demented as me. I don't know. But no, it does make sense, because again, this song is talking about relationship with God, I feel, but there's a lot of other songs on this album. When Two Are in Love, I Wish You Heaven, Alphabet Street, where we believe he's actually talking about a physical relationship with another person. a human being, not an entity, not a deity, and how sex and love bring you closer to God in his mind, at least with the concepts of this album. In a monogamous relationship, committed relationship, this kind of sexuality is healthy, good, and sanctioned by God as being acceptable. So you can get as nasty as you want to be. To paraphrase Two Live Crew, you can get as nasty as you want to be, as long as it's in a committed relationship. And so Prince is like, yeah, I can get nasty. I've shown that in the past in previous songs, and even though this album is intended to maybe express a deeper, higher calling and deliver that message, but I still like to get nasty with the person that I am with, my partner in this. And so absolutely this could be just him being like, all right, so I told you why it's so great, why a relationship with God is so great. So now I'm going to achieve that relationship through sex, as I've told everybody can happen and is achievable. And so now I'm going to get nasty with my girl, get with my woman. So that could definitely be what he's talking about here. So that works for me too. Anything else in these lines? I mean, again, it's just metaphor filled and double entendre filled. I want to play house. I think you want to play house. Okay. I mean, is that kind of like, let's pretend we're married, or like a rehash of that concept? Maybe.
Well, I do have some things to say about that going forward. Are you going to read the rest of
this?
Yeah.
Okay. Definitely going to read the rest of this. Okay. So I just wanted to, if you had anything specifically about the lines that I already talked about, I would say it here, but I'll move forward then if you don't. All right. So then he says, you don't mind. I think you want me to beep inside of you. You want me to suck around your living room. Yeah, you. You want me to walk right down your halls. You want me to swivel in your love seat, don't you, baby? You want me to write my name on your walls. Want me to write my name. We make love with only words. I'll make love to you tomorrow. Sweet dreams. Sorry, I said sweet dreams wrong. It's sweet dreams because he pitches down his vocals for that last line of the song before the song closes. So that's how it kind of ends, and he gets even more into the double entendres with the suck around your living room, walk right down your halls, write my name on your walls, swivel in your love seat. Oof, like every line there's some sort of double entendre being used here to talk about sex or vaginas or whatever you want to call it. He even censors himself in the line, I think you want me to beep inside of you, which I find fascinating. Anytime an artist censors themselves, instead of just choosing to say it differently so that you don't have to censor yourself, he still says it, but then he beeps out the word, which, we can all imagine what he says there. So I'll let you go. I've been talking enough.
It's okay. No,
Save Erica.
I think that's the censorship thing is interesting too, especially on Glam Slam. I mean, he just decided to say it. He was like, "Come a butterfly on your skin," right? But here he bleeps it out. So that's funny. But I think, normally when Prince does this on a song, it's just like, I'm just like, okay, this is stupid. But I do think this is funnier than some of the
He's going so hard on this. It's like over the top.
I know.
Doubling down.
It is inspired a little bit because it's like the woman is the house. Like he says, we want to play house, but the woman is the house. So that's why you get all the metaphors about sucking around your living room and walking down your halls and writing on your walls, right? And then, just to get a little deeper into his catalog, he wrote a song for Tevin Campbell called The Halls of Desire. So it's not the first time, right, that he's using this metaphor. And he also wrote Sugar Walls for Sheena Easton. So again, it's like, he's talked about it in this way before, but I do think it's hilarious and inspired, especially swivel in your love seat. Who else who else would come up with that but Prince?
Mm-hmm.
So it is pretty funny. And the other couple things I'll say is that, again, when he says, I'll make love to you tomorrow, it's building that anticipation again. And when he says sweet dreams, he wants you to dream about all the things that he's going to do to you later. He's not going to do them right now. So that's what I take away from the rest of this.
Yeah, I think I start laughing when he says swivel in your love seat. Not just because that line's funny. I mean, it's funny, but at this point, you've gotten so many lines. You're hearing him just go off the rails with his. I mean, it's like almost like a comedy act. Like he's trying to one up himself with how many different ways can I say this without saying this, and how many different house metaphors can I use, or furniture metaphors, room metaphors. So he's gone all in. Like I said, he's doubled down on this. So he's in for a penny, in for a pound kind of situation with these lyrics, and the way he delivers them too. I get the impression that he's kind of doing them a little tongue in cheek. He's got his swagger on. Write my name on your walls. Walk right down your halls, and he's definitely got the swagger going.
Yeah.
With these lines, so he knows what he's doing with this. He knows exactly how this is going to come across. It's going to come across a little bit silly, and a little bit sexy, but mostly just silly.
Yeah.
And I do like, by the time he pauses, the dramatic pause between "I'll make love to you tomorrow," that I lose it there too. And then you get the kiss sounds that he recreates, like from the song Kiss. And then his vocals, "Sweet Dreams," right before the end. It's just to me, it's a perfect ending to just this bonkers ending. I just love it. I don't know why I do, but I just love it. I think it's because, kind of like International Lover, where, I laugh at that song too, and for the same reasons, because all the different metaphors that he's using for, your seat may be used as a flotation device, and just all that stuff just makes me laugh whenever he goes that hard on them and goes that heavy on them as well. I enjoy that part of it. Like if you just did a one line, or that's when I would roll my eyes, but 6, 7, 8 different lines following that pattern, that these metaphors, you just know he's doing it to get a rise out of you.
Yeah.
A little bit of a laugh and a smirk. So yeah, I think it's interesting, all of these lines, the way that can be interpreted, him wanting to reach that orgasmic peak that he's talking about, in his connection and getting more closer to God through a kiss, through sex, through whatever you want to call it at the end of the song. I think we kind of covered basically what we feel about, at least our opinions about how the song ends. I threw out a really out there interpretation. I still stick by that, not necessarily saying that I think that that's the only way to interpret it, but part of me is like, I still think there's some validity to him, like also talking about how that's why I called it "Horny for God" song.
Yeah,
you can look at it both ways. Like he's just so into this feeling of Lovesexy, so into this feeling of being close to God. This thing that I wouldn't say he discovered it or found it for the first time, because he'd been expressing spirituality and showing off a little bit of his religious side in previous songs. But this is almost like he's kind of broken. Like there's like maybe one last chain wrapped around his ankle or his wrist or something that was keeping him from fully embracing it the way that he felt like he needed to, and it was finally broke free. And this expression on this album, and maybe more specifically this song, is what we get when somebody has just that feeling of sheer orgasmic bliss, and how that is being expressed in this song, whether it's for God or for another woman, or maybe both simultaneously. That's the kind of feeling I get here. It's like he's just so happy. Like it's it rubs off on you. Like it's a little bit like you can catch the feeling from him just listening to the song. And if it makes you laugh, then great. I mean, that's a positive feeling. Maybe he wants you to get closer to God, but if it also the song makes you smile and laugh, then that's, I think, a win for him as well.
Yeah, I agree. And you know, as you were talking, I was thinking about the Rainbow Children, his other spiritual concept album, and I think this should be in conversation with that album, but it's different. Like Lovesexy feels, especially thinking about this song, it feels a little bit lighter than the Rainbow Children. There's joy and there's humor on the Rainbow Children, but not to this extent. And I think that's why a lot of people who may not share his religious beliefs find this album more accessible than that, because you're not going to find a song like Lovesexy on the Rainbow Children. And I guess the other thing I just wanted to mention, if you want to get a visual representation of the joy that you're hearing on this song, you could look at the performance of Lovesexy on the tour. Like he and Kat are just going at it in terms of dancing together, and it's just really fun to watch. Going back to what you said about that bliss, it's like a visual representation of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very cool, and I'm glad that he was able to do that for audiences around the world on this tour. Really important for him, I think, to deliver this message, not just in Europe or not just in the United States, but across the entire globe. Mm-hmm. Because it's universal. I mean, right? I mean, the idea and the concepts are universal, regardless of what language you speak, or even what your religious beliefs are. The joyful feeling that one gets. I mean, sex is universal, obviously, but also with whatever God you believe in, if you believe at all, it's the intention, I'd like to think, is that you feel good about it. Like it shouldn't make you feel bad. And that's anytime that you, like, if you're in a religion that makes you feel bad about it, makes you feel like it's something to be fearful of or a negative thing, maybe that's not the right religion for you. Because I think that he would have agreed, especially during the performance of and writing of this album. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be joyous. It's supposed to make you laugh, cry. I mean, he says all of this in the song. Makes you laugh, makes you cry. But maybe good tears, like tears of joy. And even if it's, tears of sadness, it's short-lived because there's, heaven's just a kiss away, right? I mean, it doesn't take long or it doesn't take much to get back into that Lovesexy feeling. Just a kiss, just another expression of love and affection with your significant other or connection with God, and that, touching it, kissing it as a metaphor for just getting closer to God even works as well. So that's my final kind of thoughts on the song. I think it's a very universally it can be a very universal song, even if you don't have a Christian belief. You can still take something away from the song and understand its ultimate meaning and ultimate intention, and still find joy in it. That's where I'll kind of end with my final thoughts. Did you have any additional thoughts on the song, Erica?
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say is that when we talk about Prince being a master of the sacred and profane, I think this is a good example of that. Like the way he talks about spirituality and sexuality is really, really interesting. I mean, a casual listen to this again, you could just be like, okay, whatever, this is classic naughty Prince. But when you really get into the lyrics, as we've done, it is really interesting what he does with both of those concepts. So I think I'll end it there.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for engaging with me on this song. It was fun. Hopefully I didn't offend too many people that listen to the song, but just think of it, from whatever angle you want to believe, and we'll leave it at that. So where can people find you and what you're up to, Erica?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website at apurpledayindecember.com. That's where I write a lot about spirituality and Prince. And then also on social media, on Twitter, I'm at at Miss MISS underscore E Thompson, ETHOMPSON. And that's my same handle for Instagram as well.
Very cool. All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show, Erica. Always a pleasure. This has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. You can find the show, Press Rewind Pod, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Check it out. Appreciate any feedback you have, any thoughts you have on the song, anything that we might have missed, or some additional concepts you thought were maybe less overt that you want to talk about or touch on. And until next time, goodbye.